Aloha, what it do, party peoples? And so, as you watch this channel more, you will notice that one of my guilty pleasures is that I like to watch right wingers talk crap about pretty much anybody. I just think it's funny. I like to know what the other side is thinking, but it's just funny to me. Oh, and so this is Kewl V1C. He doesn't show his face. It's not his real name. Obviously, I'm not sure who it really is, but that's his YouTube channel name. He's a right winger. He's going to be breaking down David Pacman, talking to Dr. Phill here, and I'm going to break him down talking about them.
I never really saw you as a guy who delved into political issues per se. You seem more willing, interested, and I must say, maybe more conservative than I thought you were. Is that a fair assessment?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because
David Pacman gets totally owned by Dr. Phill. This should be no surprise here, but David Pacman was up to his slimy ways once again, but Dr. Phill totally
Smarmy.
outmaneuvered the sliminess, gave some great answers, and totally schooled David Pacman. Let's see what Dr. Phill has to say.
Phil McGraw, also known as Dr. Phill, host of Dr. Phill Prime Time on Merritt Street Media, and author of the new book, We've Got Issues, How You Can Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity. You know, I'm very interested to speak to you today because in preparation for our interview, I've been watching some of the Fox News appearances, looking at the book, etc. I never really saw you as a guy who delved into political issues per se.
But really, to me, everything is political. Like, no matter what you do, it's either yay or nay, and it's going to go through some kind of vetting, right? And that's going to be some kind of politics.
You seem more willing, interested, and I must say, maybe more conservative than I thought you were. Is that a fair assessment?
not at all.
Okay.
Because I am so not political, you can't even believe it. And I'll tell you why. I know nothing about politics. And, and I know why you say that.
He knows nothing about politics. That's a problem. You have too much money and too much say, too much like bully pulpit or whatever you call it, to not know politics at all.
It sounds like it.
Right.
I talk about these things as cultural issues from a psychological, psychosocial standpoint, how they affect families and people. And they do overlap with some of the things that politicians talk about, but they talk about it from a political standpoint, funding standpoint, how they can get this bill or that bill through. Couldn't care less. But I am interested in those issues in terms of how they impact families in their day-to-day pursuit of life and peace. And
that doesn't make any sense. You care how it affects the family, but you don't care if it goes through or not. Like, if it's good for the family, you would probably want it to be funded and go through, wouldn't you? And if you thought it was bad for the family, you wouldn't want the funding. You would want it to not go through. That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Being able to raise their family in a healthy environment. So there's a lot of overlap, but I don't talk about it from a political standpoint because I frankly don't know enough about the politics of it all.
You need to learn about
That's
politics.
I'm just willing to admit that. I'm just willing to admit it. I don't think
This dude is what? You got to be in your 50s, if not 60s, right? How you going to be this old, have this much money, have this much leisure time? You work less than probably almost, at least less than half of America. You got all the leisure time in the world and you don't know politics. That is a problem.
I think a lot of other people know either. I'm just willing to admit it.
I don't want to make this
And I would call that projection. Just because you don't know don't mean other people don't know.
like, famously there's this story of literary critics were talking about the symbolism in Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, and he would tell them, that's not at all what I meant. And so I don't want to make this where I tell you about how political all the stuff you say is, but the reason why I say it is a lot of the language in the book, and when you talk about issues like immigration and culture and others, it seems as though it alludes to going back to the good old days, individual decisions in the style that many Republicans now talk about with regard to schooling and parenting, etc. But you're saying it's just not the case.
No, and that doesn't mean that there aren't politicians on both sides of the aisle. that talk about these issues. But if you really think about raising a family in America, whether it's now or 50 years ago or 20 years down the road, we still have to keep our eye on what I think are core issues in America. And I think the backbone of America is the family unit. I really think that if we have strong families, if we have strong family values, and I think that our families in America, as you've heard me say and read me say, are under attack. And I think some of those...
Well, there's a lot to that. So, family values. Black people were stolen from where they come from and had way different family values than what were forced upon us here. We didn't choose to have these family values. And then he said 50 years ago. Up until 50 years ago was 74, so that was around the Civil Rights era. The 60s, 50s, 60s, and I guess 70s was just right after. So, I mean, the family values it's just like crazy. Like, we had family values pushed on us, and then I guess we got our civil rights or whatever, and then we had more of a choice. And then they got this whole thing about, giving black women money to, welfare to not be with the man and all this and that and whatnot, and breaking up the black family. But then also family values. You're going to put black people in jail, black men especially, for weed, crack cocaine the size of a quarter. But then your family values, the same man that writes this bill, his family values, he's gonna write his son off, he's gonna pardon his son, but then put a lot of our fathers and brothers and sisters in jail for the same stuff you're gonna family value and get your son off for, but then put our people in jail. Like, so your family values, to me, man, it's a screwed up thing, because it's y'all's way or the highway, and there's a lot of different ways that just is BS.
Those attacks are unintended consequences of technology, for example. But these are things that, whether politicians talked about them or not, if they tried to legislate about them or not, I would still be talking about.
So give some examples of that. What are some of the attacks facing families?
Well, I think about 08, 09, we
the housing crisis.
What I think has been the biggest change to human life since the Industrial Revolution. I think before the Industrial Revolution, we were a very agricultural civilization, right? People worked on the farms. We grew what we needed. But then we became mechanized, and I think back then we were 95% agricultural. Now we're 1% agricultural. Why? Because everything is so mechanized and people move to the cities and all. Well, so
the entire way we live has changed, but we haven't changed our system or the way we do things. We still have our Constitution, which was written by these farmers, fine, whatever, and it was, what do you say, 95% was farmers, and then now it's only 1% are farmers. How is that a thing?
Thing that's happened since then
or like, how do we still have their rules? If it was 95% farming and then now it's only 1% farming, we need different rules, different laws, different statutes.
My opinion was the advent of the smartphone.
So 2008, 2009,
the internet
the smartphone
became so prolific. And I mean, think about it.
People
We're walking
knowledge
around in 08, 09 with as much computing power in our hand.
And that's a big thing to me, right? The entire world got to now talk. Right now, you can talk to somebody in China, Japan, Australia, Europe, Africa. Like, you could Facebook, South America, right? Anywhere, all around the world, you could talk to people in real time right now. So that was a huge change, and I really thought that was going to bring communism up much faster. Like, we're all talking now, right? So we could just talk. The people of the world can unite. We don't need these 1% leaders anymore, and we can just do the thing, right? We could just put out what's needed and supply it. It's just crazy that we still have these stupid leaders and we have all this connection now. But I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. Let me try to let Dr. Phill talk. And oh yeah, please leave more comments. I reply to every comment. I'll talk to anybody that wants to leave a comment. And one thing I'm trying to do here, if you agree with me or not, I would like to start, what do you call that, video chatting people and having people on the channel, and we could talk about these videos together. So if you're interested in that, leave a comment down. And even if you don't want a video chat, just leave a comment so we can go back and forth, because I reply to all my comments.
With smartphones, laptops, iPads, that we had when we did the moon shot. When we put a man on the moon, we didn't have as much computing power as we can hold in our hands as of 08, 09, and it changed everything. And people stopped being so involved with the reality of life and started getting involved in virtual life. And it's only gone more and more in that direction since that time. And also at that time, we started seeing the highest levels of anxiety, depression, and loneliness in young people since records were kept. And
I'm with you on this one.
changed.
I'm with you on this one. Jonathan Haidt has studied and written about this extensively. You and I are aligned on this.
This is what the
commercial
perfect
time. So,
gift for a man looks like.
I've thought about
so
stuff
my
like
wife
that.
got me this
and
weird new kitchen.
So
What?
with the advent of cell phones, and even more just with health, I wasn't even thinking about a cell phone when I thought this. But we're a capitalist society, right? So this will never happen. But I think you should be able to get off of work, say 2 hours early, if you go to the gym for an hour. Everyone should have that opportunity. Like, you could come in 2 hours late, get off 2 hours early, whichever one, doesn't really matter. But if you go to the gym for 1 hour, so then, that's a little bit of travel time, this and that. But what it does is makes everybody healthier, and just, you got more endorphins, you're happier, all that stuff. Being in better shape makes you happier, but they won't do that because they'd rather you be at work. But if they really wanted you to be healthy, healthcare and all this stuff, they would encourage the gym more. And so with these cell phones now, the cell phones should be like those little watches and stuff. The watches tell you, oh, stand up, right? The cell phone should be like, oh, you've been on it for 20 minutes, do 20 jumping jacks or something, right? You could do that for little kids, and if they hold it in their hand, the phone will know if they're doing jumping jacks or not, and it won't keep going until they do their 20 jumping jacks or whatever it tells them to do. But there's all kinds of ways to solve these problems.
What about the ones that fall under what you call the tyranny of the fringe? Because I don't think the smartphone example falls under that category, right?
No, that's why I say some of this is the unintended consequences of technology.
Collateral
But
damage.
then we've got some where we've got people that are just trying to change some of the core values in America, core values of family, trying to rewrite history. And we've got people that are coming in saying, well, we want to change history, we want to change what kids are being taught in history, we want to change biology, we want to change all of the things that we have for 100 years had empirical data to support.
But tell me more. I don't
wanna
want to gloss over this. I really want to understand this. Changing history. Okay, what?
David is so slimy. He always has to play dumb. He doesn't, we all know, we all know what Dr. Phill is talking about, And listen, I understand David Pacman, he's an interviewer. I understand he wants Dr. Phill to articulate his arguments and stuff. I get it.
Right?
I get it.
So that's why he asked the question.
The whole beginning of this argument is David Pacman saying, hey, you're a conservative. I think you're a conservative, and blah, 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 blah. And then Dr. Phill straight up says, nah, I'm not really into politics. I'm coming at this as a social thing. So then David Pacman's like, yeah, but in your book you said the family's under attack. Explain that. And Dr. Phill explains it. But now David Pacman is like, yeah, but it seems like David Pacman's the one trying to fit this all into politics. Dr. Phill straight up said, yeah, I'm not really coming at this from a political slant or anything. This is just socially. And you have
Well, David Pacman is a political show, so he's going to go at most subjects, topics, whatever, from politics. If you go on David Pacman's show, he's going to talk about left and right almost, I would assume with 100% of people, at least 90% of people. And the people, I don't know why he wouldn't talk about it with the people he wasn't talking about it with, but I would assume it'd be 100%, really. So, yeah, it makes no sense to be like, why is he being political? This is a political show.
Pacman here trying to make it political. I don't know. That's what I'm getting for this. What do you guys think? Sound off in the comments below. Give this video a like. Let's continue.
What was the history that used to be taught that now has been changed by the tyranny of the fringe?
Well, pick an area. We can talk about biology, where we have always had two sexes.
But what?
So that's not true. You have Native Americans who have, what is it? Is it the twin spirit or third spirit or something like that? I forget. I'm ignorant. But in Polynesian cultures, they have, I don't know if you call it more than one gender, but they have, like in Vietnamese, they call them ladyboys and stuff, right? So all over the world, there's people who feel like the other gender, and I mean, that's way more than 100 years old. Way more than 100 years old.
What about history? Just to pick history, not biology, because you said history, biology. What about history?
Well, there's a lot of history to biology, and you would be missing a big point to pretend that there's not historical biology. But if you want to talk,
I would say historical biology would point that most cultures assume, like, have more than two genders or whatnot. I mean, man and woman are the top most, but I mean, there are all kinds of men who dress like women and women who act like men in other cultures, and it's just what it is. It's like not even a big deal.
Talk about history, we can not in biology, but just talk about the history of mankind.
Yeah.
We've got
$453,000 in a single month as an affiliate marketer with
areas where they don't want to talk about slavery. We had one a group of people that wanted to start describing slavery in history books as involuntary relocation.
I would call slavery involuntary relocation at its worst, but I mean,
right.
Trying to church it up.
This is not involuntary relocation. This was slavery, and we've got people that are wanting to rename schools because people that were doing what were the mores and folkways of the times now would clearly be doing things against the law, certainly against mores and folkways, because they were slave owners at the time, are saying, well, now we have to tear down these statues. We have.
So I don't really care that much either way. But if you want to change the name of a school and take down a statue, I understand. Why glorify people who did these just disastrous things? Like, most slave owners, if not all slave owners, are rapists, right? They all sold children. They all were in the child trading. They, like, the stuff that Jeffrey Epstein did, we got people like that on the $1 bill, the $2 bill. Those people started this country, right? They were child traffickers. They were people traffickers, but when you traffic all people, you traffic, or all ages anyway, you traffic children too. Just that they didn't care that they trafficked children that looked different than them doesn't make it okay that they were like evil enough to be like, I don't care that these, and then they would call them beasts or 3/5 of a person or animals, but they'd have sex with them and have children with them. So are you bestiality? You're pro bestiality? Are you stupid? Are you crazy or what? Like, I don't understand. Like, why would you want to have somebody who practiced bestiality, slavery, rape, and child trafficking the name of your school? That's how we get Jeffrey Epstein's, because we got people like that on our dollar bill. So then we got Jeffrey Epstein's.
Have to rename these schools, and we don't want to teach about them. We have
No, we want to teach about them, teach about the people, teach about what they did, and be honest, and let everyone know why we changed the name of this school.
to learn from our mistakes as a society. We can't pretend those things didn't
Right,
happen.
no one wants to pretend that it didn't happen.
They were dark and ugly times in American history. We don't want to pretend those things weren't there.
They were dark and ugly times, and they were dark and ugly people. And if they did these things and we celebrate them and have statues of them, that's how we could go back to those times, because people will misconstrue and be like, oh, these are great people, we should act like them. We need to go back to the tradition of the founding of America, of the beginning of America, of how we started. No, it's not what we need.
So let me see if I understand.
Yeah, Dr. Phil is absolutely correct. But on top of that, too, it's also taught in schools. It's taught in a way where, because these bad things happened in our past, that's why things are bad now. Like, that's why, like, because we had slavery, that's why blacks have it so hard now.
It's not just because of slavery, but it's because of slavery, redlining, going in and just physically destroying our homes and chasing us out of towns for up until the 70s, really. And still, like, you got George Floyd and all these other Black Lives Matter guys who've been getting killed. So, yeah, like, it's not just slavery, but
and it's like they're taught in a way to prove, like, we live in a systemic racist society now, an oppressive society now.
We do.
And to demonize white people now.
No.
And to treat
my mother is white. Half of my family is white. Like, when I go to Christmases or whatnot, I live in Hawaii, so I don't go to Christmases as much anymore. But when I was going to Christmases and all that, like, I go to a white one and a black one. But I think the black one was on Saturday. Or no. Yeah, Christmas Eve, that's what it is. My black ones were on Christmas Eve, my white ones were on Christmas days. And so, I mean, it has nothing to do with demonizing white people. It has to do with, if you want to call it demonizing, but like looking at the system that was built by slave owners to call me 3/5 a person and not even a human being, but then to sell my kids. That's not okay. We need to change this.
All minorities as of their victims now. That's another aspect of this whole, like, the school system, that our history, our past, is also, like, taught in a way that demonizes groups of people now and are in our country now. You know, it's like, we don't even have Christopher Columbus Day anymore. I mean,
Right,
listen,
because
say what
we
you
have a lot
want.
of
I know there's a
indigenous
lot of
people.
people who don't like Christopher Columbus because, he did some bad things or whatever like that. I'm going to be completely 100% honest here. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about Christopher Columbus, and to be honest, I don't really care. All
Then why
I
are you
know
speaking
is,
about him?
how did Christopher Columbus contribute to the founding of America? Oh, he discovered America? Oh, but he wasn't the first one here. There's already Native Americans here. Yeah, I know. But he was the
just
first
don't care about
European
them.
to discover it, and without Christopher Columbus, who knows where this country would be at right now? Like, would it be better now? Maybe. Would it be worse now? It could be too. But the fact of the matter is, without Christopher Columbus landing over here in North America, we might not have the same America that you see today. And I know a lot of people hate this country, but they seem to have no problem enjoying the benefits and the riches that this country offers.
So if you're born in America or can make it to America, of course you're going to try to enjoy whatever benefits it has to offer. But the biggest benefit that it has to offer is that we don't attack us. We attack some of us, but we don't bomb us like we do Gaza or like we do Somalia or like we do Afghanistan or Iraq or Vietnam or Korea, or we don't coup us like we do Argentina and Iran and all the other places that we do this to. Like, America, the U.S. is the safest place in the world because we don't firebomb us like we do the rest of the world. We will kill our radicals, but, we don't kill Americans like we kill other brown people around the world.
And freedoms that this country offers. But yeah, that's just one of many examples of how this fringe minority here is trying to erase our history. What do you guys think? Sound off in the comments below. Subscribe to my channel if you like content like this. Let's continue.
So if I hear you correctly,
Subscribe to my channel, guys.
you're not in agreement with
Leave a
those
comment.
who want to minimize the tragedy and brutality of slavery, but you also want to keep the school names. If a school is named after a slave owner, you're also okay with that because it will remind us and we will learn from it. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think you're oversimplifying what I'm saying. What
Okay.
I'm saying is, if you're wanting to change American history to pretend that these people did not exist,
No one
and
wants
you
to do
want to
that.
measure them by today's yardstick
Just by human
rather than
yardsticks.
the yardstick at the time, that's what is referred to.
Well, people had different yardsticks at the time. There were many abolitionists for all of slavery. So the yardstick at the time varies always. Like, some people love Donald Trump, some people love Kamala Harris, some people hate them both. The yardstick is very different. Joe Biden, he had a yardstick for people in the 90s. If you had a quarter of crack, you're going to jail for 5 years. Now he has a yardstick that if you're named Hunter Biden, you have over 20 grams of crack and weigh it out on what do you call it, video. You don't have to go to jail at all. You get pardoned. So the yardstick changes. It changes with time and it changes with individual. Like, if you're rich, your yardstick is huge. You don't have to suffer any consequences. If you're poor, your yardstick is really small. You get in trouble for everything you do.
As presentism. And that's like saying, okay, you're going to drive through a neighborhood and the speed limit is 20. And you drive through that neighborhood doing 20. And then they come along and say, you know what, we're going to change the speed limit to 10, and we're going to give you a ticket for speeding when the speed limit was 20. It's now 10, but you weren't speeding when you were doing 20, but now it's 10. We're going to give you a retroactive ticket.
So it's like, if racing was now found dangerous, maybe, and they stopped NASCAR or something, and then they didn't glorify NASCAR. I don't know, maybe that's a weird analogy too, but that's stupid. If you were doing, no one's getting tickets. It might cost money to take down a statue, but the people that want to take down a statue are willingly taking down the statue. They're not going to anybody's house and giving them tickets or putting up statues, or no one's taking down statues out of anybody's private yards. If you want to fly a Confederate flag or a Nazi flag, you can. If you want to have a Robert Lee picture or flag or statue in your yard, you can. That's your prerogative. That's your right. But in a public space, it's nobody's right to have something that one could scare people. Like, you got little black kids that got to look at slave owner statues. No little black kid wants to see that. No dad wants to tell their black son that, oh, this guy used to own people like us, and he has a statue.
For doing what was acceptable at the time.
And it wasn't
That's
acceptable at the time.
presentism.
There were
Abolitionists. What was
abolitionists.
done back at the time, pull
Abolitionists.
it up into the current time, and condemn you for not knowing what was going to be acceptable 200 years later than when you did it. And I think that is really narcissistic and arrogant and rewriting history instead of letting people learn from the mistakes that were made in America and that we need to learn from so we don't make those mistakes again. Because some of those people also did some really good things at the time.
Teach
We
that
don't
too.
need to endorse everything they did, but we need to acknowledge the good and the bad.
And that's precisely what a lot of these school systems do. They only acknowledge the bad and really demonize them. They only point out the bad. Like, before, it was taught, like, oh, like all the good things they did. But now it's taught, well, these are all the bad things they did. This is why we shouldn't,
I don't know
again,
if they
have
teach in
statues
school right
of them
now,
or
but they should teach the
this
good
is why
and
we
the
shouldn't have
bad.
a holiday for them.
But
or
the
whatnot.
bad far outweighs the
all
good.
this stuff. Like, these people are definitely using this to kind of change the way America is right now. Like, they are trying to change this country. They are trying to reset this country. That's why they've torn down statues. That's why they want to get rid of certain holidays. They want to reset. And I'm sorry, but no. And especially if this reset that you want is leading to things like, transing children.
Well, I'm not trying to trans any children, but I am an anti-capitalist, and I am trying to change this country. I do not like how we just kill everybody around the world, war everybody around the world. You got to work for this paper money or now these digits on the screen that don't even make any sense. You got people like Elon Musk with trillions of dollars, and people, I live in Hawaii, and there's people all over the street out here, so it doesn't make any sense the way we do things. So yes, let's change a lot of it.
Then no, I do not want this reset. I also would like to go back to how it was, when we could define what a woman was. And if your new hero is, say, George Floyd versus Thomas Jefferson or something.
Thomas Jefferson, a slave owner and a child rapist. Yes, that's why like I said, when we glorify these child rapists in our past, child rapists now, they're with the rich people, right? They got Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, they got all them people. Epstein got pictures with everybody, right? So, I mean, this is the history of our country, and yeah, I want to change some of that. Not change the history. We should learn about it, right? And be honest about it. And then people would be grossed out about some of this stuff and maybe it wouldn't still happen. But if you're worried about child trafficking, but you'd rather look at Thomas Jefferson as a hero, he had a room for a 14-year-old girl. Like, it's just insane.
I'm sorry, but Thomas Jefferson accomplished way more than George Floyd did.
With little children.
And we could make the same arguments about George Floyd, about how the bad things that he's done. But the same people who want to reset and change this country, will just ignore all that and try to look at the positive things. So it's BS. They're all full of it, pretty much. Just like David Pacman here. And I think Dr. Phill did a great job. But what do you guys think? Sound off in the comments below. And if you want to see more of David Pacman making an ass out of...
All right, and so that's Kewl V1C making fun of David Pacman talking to Dr. Phill. But yeah, I'm far left of David Pacman. He's pretty liberal. But this was a pretty good interview. I thought he asked some good questions, and I thought he did a good job here. Kewl V1C is a far right person, and they can't acknowledge when somebody anywhere left of them does anything good. So when you see liberals in the far right will argue a lot. Like, more left people will kind of talk and interview libertarians too, and we'll try to talk it out and whatnot. But so I thought that was a pretty good interview. I like to show people both sides or whatever, and then you can see this right winger. I like to watch right wingers just go over videos, and to me it's just kind of funny. I don't know. All right, and so until next time, have a good time.